The Pod News Weekly Review uses chapters. Use a modern podcast app to skip through the stories if you're a lightweight, or listen all the way through like an OG.
It's Friday, the 25th of April, 2025.
The last word in podcasting news. This is the Pod News Weekly Review with James Cridland and Sam Sethi.
I'm James Cridland, the editor of Pod News.
And I'm Sam Sethi, the CEO of TrueFact.
So True Crime is actually Sawal Iftarif, so it's the number one podcast in the GCC. But it's not only true crime, it's also a mix of cultural or personal journals.
Stefano Falaha from Podio on podcasting in the Arab states. Plus,
ever since YouTube came into the market, and they think about podcasts as a synonymous word with interviews. Basically, podcasts equaling interviews, that creates a whole host of new problem statements in the market.
Gotham Rajanand from Hubhopper on Indian podcasting after YouTube, and the 2 billion podcast industry, Odyssey behaving badly, and micropayments from X. This podcast is sponsored by Buzzsprout, with the tools, support and community to ensure you keep podcasting. Start podcasting, keep podcasting with Buzzsprout.com.
From your daily newsletter, the Pod News Weekly Review.
James, let's kick the show off then. Right. Do I go boom or do I go, oh my God, finally? I don't know which way I feel. But podcasting is now a $2 billion ad industry in the USA. Tell me more, James.
It is, yes. We have finally broken $2 billion. I have to say, it was a bit of a surprise to me, given that last year wasn't a fantastic year for many people. Quite a surprise to see a significant growth for podcast ad revenue in the US. It broke $2 billion and, in fact, has earned $2.4 billion. According to the IAB and PricewaterhouseCoopers, who have put together the Internet Ad Revenue Report. In total, Internet advertising revenue hit $258 billion in 2024. So, podcasting is still less than a 1% medium, but still, nevertheless, pretty good news, I think.
Yeah, it's great news, but how do they measure it?
It's quite an interesting way of doing it. They actually talk to a ton of people, a ton of ad agencies and people who are actually buying podcast advertising, and asking them for their numbers. So it's something that they've done for some time. It's not unusual. There are a couple of other companies who do the same sort of thing, because obviously at the end of the day, everybody wants to know what everybody else is doing anyway. But that's basically how they've put the numbers. Now, the question, I suppose, from my point of view is, what's a podcast? Because obviously that will make a difference in terms of what this means for these numbers, given that, YouTube may well be a proportion of that. How much, can we claim YouTube our podcasts in here and et cetera, et cetera. But still, it's still nice to see that that we've bashed through the $2 billion ceiling, which we've been trying to do for a number of years now.
Is there a European or worldwide report? Do they extend the numbers beyond just the USA?
There are some reports that I have seen from other countries, but it's a little bit more difficult to get that information, on a comparable basis. So, it would be lovely, wouldn't it, to see what the global figures are as well.
Is anyone predicting 3 billion?
I haven't seen anybody predicting anything yet. That's always a dangerous thing to do, particularly for this year, because who knows what's going to happen given the economy right now. Who knows whether or not everybody is going to go but gangbusters later on in the year, or if everybody is going to just pull back and not do any of that stuff.
Would any of this be also a boom based on the back of a presidential election?
Well, quite a lot of, the difficulty with a presidential election is actually quite a lot of people pull their ad money until the election has actually happened. And so, of course, the election only happens in mid-November. That doesn't necessarily mean a ton more cash. Now, what it means for radio broadcasters is it does mean a ton more cash, because radio broadcasters normally get quite a lot of political advertising. Not really seeing that for podcasting. So So I'm not sure, to be honest, I'm not sure that the presidential election actually helped these numbers. Certainly what we've seen is that people really didn't want to pay until after they knew who was getting in, and then they can make their plans and everything else. So, and that's certainly what what my business saw. Was not very much spending towards the end of the year, and then all of a sudden, December, January, February, quite a lot of money in the market. So, who knows what happens this year?
Okay, well, we'll watch this space. Now, moving on, the Spotify Partner Program was available in Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom and the USA. It's now grown to 9 new countries. I thought when I sent you an email, James, that I was being really clever. I'd found something, only for you to send me a link going, no, covered that, March 27th. I was like, oh, okay. But it is still a case that on April the 29th, they will be rolling out the program in Europe.
Yes, and this is good news for two sets of people, actually. Firstly, it's good news for video creators in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, France, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Ireland. All of those places can apply for the Spotify Partner Program, earn money from their podcasts, whether that's in audio or in video. So all of that is good news. But also it's good news, actually, for those of us who are in other countries, Australia or Canada or the UK or the US, because until now, you don't earn money from people in countries where the Spotify Partner Program isn't available. So all of a sudden you will get more cash coming in from the Spotify premium users in those countries as well. So I think I calculated 43% more people. Now, obviously, different shows are more popular in different places, but that's a big exciting push. I think for potentially earning cash with the Spotify Partner Program. Of course, there's a lot of discussion about that right now. We had Maya Brahovnik on the show last week, and she was talking about exactly that. But it's good news, I think, for quite a lot of people.
Mm. Now, moving on, James, X, formerly known as Twitter, made an announcement. Now, this is not directly related to podcasting, but I thought it was worth you and I discussing it because they are adding wallet support and micropayments. Now, I've long said that when I was at Netscape, it was not Netscape that made the web, but it was Microsoft, and most people were surprised. Yes, Netscape were the scrappy startup with the browser, but actually Microsoft putting it into the operating system and making it one-click access for the mainstream was what made the web take off. And I've long said that one company larger than, the Podcasting 2.0 apps, if they adopt the wallet mechanism and also support micropayments and take it to the mainstream, will help us all in the podcasting world. And I think, sadly, it's X and not another company. But again, this is the announcement from Linda Yaccarino, the so-called CEO. And again, nobody knows, is she the CEO of XAI or just X? Anyway, that's another question. But this is exciting news. I haven't got any more details other than Visa are behind it. And they are going to allow you to connect to your debit card. And it is peer-to-peer payments. So any thoughts?
Yeah, I suppose the question is, does this... I don't see the word micropayment in her announcement. So, yes, there are ways of paying. Ways of paying people through the X Money account, whatever that is. But I don't instantly see anything around micropayments because, yes, that would be brilliant if there was ways of making micropayments to other people. Then that significantly helps. And by the way, there is an open API for it. That significantly helps where we are in the podcasting world. I don't see that quite yet. And I guess from Visa's point of view, well, where's Visa going to make the money? Visa's going to make the money from people loading their wallets, I suppose. Are Visa expecting to make money from each individual transaction? Because if they are, then clearly that's not going to work from a micropayment point of view.
I'm suspecting that it's the same way that I use Stripe, where you do a transfer of fiat currency into sats. So you load up your wallet, and then from your wallet, you make those transactions, and then you can withdraw from your wallet, or you can top up your wallet again via Visa. I think they're the backbone, not the transactional element.
Yeah. So that's Strike with a K, of course.
Stripe with a P.
Stripe with a P?
Yes, not with a K.
Are you sure?
I'm using Stripe with a P as my backbone, not Strike with a K as a wallet. Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that Stripe did Bitcoin.
Yes.
Have I been fast asleep with that one?
Yes,
how bizarre. I have never spotted that before. Well, there we are. You learn a new thing every day. Well, there you go. So if that's the case, then great. Of course, they won't be using Bitcoin or anything. They'll be using X money, whatever X money is.
Dogecoin, I think, is what I worry about.
Well, yes, exactly. Yes, it'll be some weird thing that they end up using. But no, interesting. I mean, obviously, a lot of things need to line up in order for this to work for all of us. We need an open API. X needs to make money somehow out of this, I suppose, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's interesting to end up seeing that. You also mentioned that X have launched a merch store, and that merch store, which is called X Drop 2 for some reason, that will allow users to buy merch using micropayments from their wallet.
They will allow them to use their wallet to make the payments. So I am assuming they're micropayments. Okay, we haven't got the detail yet, but I'm assuming that it's micropayments. Otherwise, it would be just a Visa card, and that would be just nothing exciting or new.
Yes, indeed. Although, of course, that's what Apple and Google have both done. They've both essentially just put their name in front of a Visa or a MasterCard. But interesting to see what happens there with the ever reliable Elon Musk.
Now, moving on, you had a story this week. I'm just going to call it Odyssey behaving badly. Tell me more.
Yes, although the suggestion of anything improper is absurd. Odyssey...
Said the lawyer.
Said Odyssey, actually, to be fair. So once upon a time, there was a company called Podcorn, and Podcorn was a way of earning money from your podcast. You tied it into Podcorn. Podcorn measured how popular your podcast was, and Podcorn also sold, I think they sold host reads on your podcast if it was big enough. So that's what Podcorn would do. Podcorn is now called Odyssey Creator Lab. But back in the days when it was still called Podcorn, a number of podcast hosting companies did partnerships with Podcorn to basically say, here are all of our users. All of our users want to make money from their podcast. So here's a quick button that will enable them to take part in Podcorn, which, of course, makes a ton of sense. The difficulty now is that Odyssey's Creator Lab has launched, which is Podcorn, but what Odyssey have also done is they've launched a free podcast hosting company. So hooray for them. But of course, one of the first things they did is they marketed through email to all of their customers. Hello, we are now called Odyssey Creator Lab, and you should be hosting with us as well now. So basically, if you're one of the large podcast companies who did a deal with Podcorn, what you've basically done is you've handed all of your customers email addresses and everything else to Odyssey, who are now promoting their own free podcast platform. So a bit of a oops from all concerned, really. I think it's pretty bad behaviour on Audacy's part. Audacy clearly don't see anything wrong. Audacy's spokesperson told me some guff about being excited to be expanding our offerings, blah, 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 blah. The suggestion of anything improper is absurd. Well, I think if you are all of a sudden mailing all of the customers that you were given from podcast hosting companies and saying, all right, screw those podcast hosting companies, come and join ours, we're free, is a bit improper, to be honest. But that's where they have ended up being. But I do know a number of different hosting companies who are quite annoyed at it, shall we say.
Yeah, well, Kelly Turner is the president and chief executive officer for Audacy. Maybe I should ping her and see if she'd want to come on the show. Yeah,
I mean, maybe, although I would be surprised if she knew what Audacy Creator Lab was. I think she's way, way, way up in the stratosphere.
Oh, really?
In terms of that sort of thing. Yes, I would have thought so.
Oh, okay.
But,
sorry.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, who knows whether or not Audacy particularly cares, but it does look, to me at least, as if they've been stiffing the podcast hosting companies who gave them a ton of customers. So it's a weird one, actually, Podcorn, because you might remember that we've occasionally carried stories basically saying, are they still going? Are they still actually existing? Because it was very, very quiet from them for quite some time. And that probably explains why, because they were busy rebranding themselves.
Well, they also had massive layoffs as well. So
yes,
that was the other thing that we sort of highlighted. Anyway, there's Audacy for you.
There's Audacy for you. And by the way, now that Audacy is out of bankruptcy, and I'm not saying that Cumulus is going into bankruptcy, but one of the things that has just been announced is that Cumulus Media is coming off NASDAQ because it can't keep its shares to above $1. And so Cumulus has basically gone, you know what? Rather than investing time, effort and cost into keeping on the NASDAQ, we're just coming off. So that's what's happening for Cumulus, which of course is a competitor to Audacy. So it's all going on in the US, isn't it?
Now, whizzing around the world and talking about the US, at least that's what it's called this week, the Netflix earnings call had talks about video podcasts, James. What were they talking about?
Yes, but only a little bit. This is the clip.
The next question is from Matt Thornton of FBN Securities. Do you think video podcasts could perform well as a category on Netflix?
So we're constantly looking at all different types of content and content creators. The lines between podcast and talk shows are getting pretty blurry. We want to work with kind of great creators across all kinds of media that consumers love. And podcasts, to your point, have become a lot more video forward. And today we actually produce a lot of podcasts ourselves, part of our kind of publicity and publishing efforts. So some are really show specific, like Squid Game and Diplomat. Some are genre focused. Some are talent focused. We have a great one called You Can't Make This Up, all about Netflix docs. And they live everywhere podcasts live today. But as the popularity of video podcasts grow, I suspect you'll see some of them find their way to Netflix.
Well, there we are. That's about as much as we know about Netflix's plan for podcasts. My suspicion, I have to say, is there's two sort of sides of it. One side is Netflix is making podcasts and they want the world to know about the fact that they're making podcasts, which is why they sponsored Evolutions, which is why they're a sponsor at the podcast show in London. And on the other side, Netflix would quite like some cheap video programming. And who's got that? Well, it's the video podcasters. You could argue, would it make sense for Netflix just to make it really easy to submit a video show onto Netflix as well? Well, why not? I mean, it's free content for them in the same way that YouTube gets all of this free content as well. So perhaps it's a plan. I don't know.
Well, given that some of the reports that we've had from Edison Research about how people are using YouTube on large TV screens as a means of consumption, it would make sense for Netflix to do the same, to get the similar content so that they can keep the platform app sticky. You're watching a film, you switch over to a TV show. Oh, look, I'm bored of both of those. Oh, I'll just watch a video podcast.
Yes, and that may well be the case. May well be what they've got planned. So that is going on in the US. Also going on in the US, our sponsor, Buzzsprout.
Go on, James. You say.
Go on.
No, I was going to say, I don't use it. Subreddit. So I was going to say, what the hell is a subreddit? Because I don't go on Reddit.
Oh, you don't go on Reddit. A subreddit is just a forum on Reddit. It's just a group. But yes, there is one there for Buzzsprout. I have tried to be in a few of the podcasting subreddits in Reddit itself. It's an interesting place. The moderators have some interesting ideas, but knowing the success of the Buzzsprout Facebook group, I suspect that this might be quite good for anybody that wants to post on there. You don't have to be a Buzzsprout customer to post in there, so it's worthwhile taking a peek at. You'll find it just by searching for Buzzsprout in Reddit.
Whizzing back here to the UK, your favourite people, the BBC, they've partnered with a global audio marketplace, Audacia. Audacia, is that how you say it?
Yeah, it's Audacia, I believe, although I was a bit confused. Kim from Audacia or Audacia. It's very difficult to know quite whether it's Audacia or Audacia. Anyway, they are. They've been both based in Singapore and in Australia, and they are looking after BBC podcasts in Asia. So places like Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, South Korea, and Vietnam. So that's quite a nice get for Audacia. So congratulations to them, I guess.
Now, this one I don't understand. Evan Davis, a BBC radio presenter, has been asked by the BBC to stop hosting the Happy Heat Pump podcast. Seems very innocuous to stop him doing that.
It does, doesn't it? It's the Happy Heat Pump podcast. But there is a good reason for that. And here's Evan Davis.
I'm a BBC employee. I take their shilling. They dictate the rules. They know they have to try and keep their presenters out of areas of public controversy, and they have decided heat pumps can be controversial. So they've asked me not to be involved.
Yes, heat pumps are apparently controversial.
Right.
Yes, that's probably the thing. I mean, to be fair, he is firstly he's a flagship presenter for of the news. So Evan Davis is one of those people that you have to be pretty careful what he's getting involved in. He presents PM, which is the big afternoon news show on BBC Radio 4. So you've got that. Really needing to be as impartial as you possibly can. He's doing this Happy Heat Pump podcast with a co-host who is a lobby group employee for heat pumps. Because it turns, so that's a thing. It turns out that the UK government is requiring new build homes in the UK to fit technology like heat pumps, but other technology options are available. And so obviously you've got this lobby group person saying it's heat pumps or nothing, and heat pumps are brilliant. And the podcast I listened to, an episode or two, and, this guy who's amazingly called Beanland, Beanland, who is the curiously named Director of Growth and External Affairs for the Heat Pump Federation. He does say some, criticism of the government and all that kind of stuff. And Evan Davis doesn't really push back very, very much. So, yeah, I think it's one of those difficult things. But unfortunately, that means that Evan has been told that he can't really continue doing this particular show. Cue lots of excited people all saying it's BBC censorship gone mad and all of that because, heat pumps are, for some reason, really controversial in the UK. Can't think why. But that's basically where that's happened. It should be pointed out that Evan Davis earns £290,000 to present that show PM on Radio 4. That's $390,000. He also earns an additional amount to host Dragon's Den, which is the UK equivalent of Shark Tank. So he's on quite a nice wodge. He doesn't necessarily need it for the money, but perhaps he did it because it was quite a fun thing to be involved in. But he's been told to stop.
I highly recommend, if you can find it, listen to Gary Lineker's exit interview with Amal Rajan about why he's leaving the BBC. The impartiality element is dealt with very nicely by Gary Lineker there.
Yes, well, there's the impartiality side, but there's also the creative, and I think Evan Davis used an interesting phrase. He said, that they've been, the BBC have been very helpful and blah, blah, blah. And he says, they're very unkeen to stop me doing things that I find rewarding. And I think actually, there is a certain amount, if you're a creative person, you want to do rewarding things. And he found this funny little podcast to be quite a rewarding thing to do. But of course, that all of a sudden gets into trouble with, all manner of exciting issues. So, so you can kind of see his point, really. But it's an interesting place.
Moving on. Middle East and Africa. Podio is a Dubai-based company that recently announced the completion of 5.4 million of funding. Congratulations to them. Their CEO, Stefano, talks about their plans to invest in their global expansion and grow their AI capabilities. And I was interested to find out more about what they were going to do. He also discusses two exciting new announcements, James. So I thought, let's kick off. I started off by asking Stefano, who or what is Podio?
Podio, we started a couple of years back with the aim of amplifying the region's voices, because we always felt that the Middle East and North Africa region, and specifically the Arabic culture, is always lacked in terms of global visibility on a global media scale. And so we always wanted to sort of crack that medium and help people with stories get their stories out there. And podcasting, as we both know it, is one of the most powerful ways to get our stories and our voices heard. And so we started by looking at the different challenges in the market. Obviously, first challenge was supply, which is the content creator part. Dived into what can we do to help creators sort of simplify their process to create. So we localized the end-to-end tools for recording, production, post-production, distribution, and monetization. And so if we look at the numbers before we entered the market, we were probably at less than 2,000 podcasts in Arabic across the entire Middle East and North Africa. And the way we tried and started going after that market was looking at the real challenges and really the gaps in that market. And we started building the tools, that very localized tools as well, to help creators get their podcasts up and running. And that number has skyrocketed to tens of thousands of creators over the last couple of years. So that's something that, we keep on doubling down on, because we believe that this is just the start of the journey of amplifying voices out of the MENA region. And so if we look at the different gaps, supply was a gap, demand was also another gap, and then obviously monetization and revenue is also the third gap. And so we look at it as a trifecta that keeps on continuously improving itself. And the beauty in the model or the platform that we built was that they all feed into each other. So really network effects have a big play or a big role in scaling organically a market, specifically when we localized the entire platform to be very culturally relevant. So a bit of context as well on the region. So the region is one language, which is Arabic, but really divided into sub-dialects. And so you have probably more than 20 different dialects across different countries. And so it's as if we're operating in 20 different markets, because Saudi creators don't listen to the same content as Egypt audiences. And then the UAE is also a very cosmopolitan country. So you also have these different dialectical changes that we need to adapt to. You also have the different dialects that we need to localize for. And so the key components or the key areas where we really optimized for was hyper locality when it comes to the product, but also when it comes to the content, and making sure that once the supply is up and ready, then the demand is also localized to the different channels. And so obviously we do distribute, and creators obviously come in the platform, upload or record, one click reaches all the platforms. So Apple, Spotify, all the typical streaming apps, but also we went above and beyond that and started plugging in with channels where consumers typically listen on. And in this region, radio was predominantly the main platform where people consumed audio content. So that was one area where we started plugging in these integrations, helped creators maximize their reach, but also improved the content or the curated content on these off-peak hours. Another side of the story as well is we started looking at channels where we can integrate audio on the go and help commuters specifically consume podcasts. So we plugged in with the RTA, which is the Road and Transportation Authority in Dubai, which operates Hala taxis. And so we partnered with the OEM, which is Binary Media, and creators just upload or distribute the same way they distribute on audio platforms. They could also reach all these avenues that we have integrated and implemented directly into the platform. And so from a macro perspective, if you look at it, we became sort of that infrastructure or the pipes of the industry, helping creators simplify their production, maximize their reach, and monetize through different avenues, which I believe we'll get into in a bit.
Well, let's get to it now. What is the monetization strategy? So is it traditional DAI? Is it host-read? Is it other forms of monetization? Tell me more.
So they are the typical forms of monetization. So programmatic direct, sponsorship host-read, branded or white labeled production. So really not very different than the typical monetization schemes. Also, something that we're definitely getting into and is tipping and donation and gifting. So really similarities with the different social platforms that are available, which I believe is something that Sam, with True Fans, you're also an expert at, and is definitely something where you see value. So that is, we're always going to help creators maximize their revenue, from maximizing fill rates to simplifying the brand or the agency connections with the creators through a marketplace, or even through the creator economy or Patreon model that is also applicable to any form of content. If we also look at podcasting, we always say it's one of the most engaging, intimate medium, but reality is the engagement between the creators and the listeners is still not there. It's not on par with the claim at which the industry or at which the reality of how consumption happens. And so that's something where we see is a big opportunity and something to double down on, which really gets us excited because that's really part of the trifecta that's just going to continuously get better and better over time.
So in the front end, is there a Podio app that people are downloading as well? Because I think when I look at what you're doing, I look at Podimo out of Denmark, and I see so many similarities because they've created their own app, they've created their own content, and again, maybe that's something you might look to in the future as well. They've raised a ton of money, and they are looking at creating regional studios for content. So their strategy is exclusive on-platform subscription, less in the advertising play, and then freemium out to the endpoints maybe a week or 2 weeks later with advertising supported to raise revenue around that. So do you see that Podio will eventually get into creating and being a creator platform, not just helping the creator, but actually creating your own content?
So that's a very good question, Sam. Our core ethos is we are not producers and we are not a production house. We are an independent, sovereign tech podcast platform. And that means that we do not get into the production of podcasts. We get into the enablement of creators or of podcasters. We do have our own Podio app, which is one channel at which we distribute the podcast to, but we are distribution first and not destination. And so that means that we do not care to consolidate audiences in one place The same way, Spotify wants to consolidate podcast audiences by doing all these exclusive deals, or Podimo consolidating as well, or acquiring pieces of content to put them on the Podimo app, right? Each one has its own strategy. What we've seen, according to our experience and very localized experience in the market, that is something that is not only challenging to do, but comparables with music, for instance, where people typically pay for music in the region. This is a region where people tend to not pay for content in general. That behavior is changing with the likes of Shahid, which is the number one streaming VOD platform in the region. And I believe that the alternative to that is always going to be giving the opportunity for the audience to decide for themselves. Here's a great piece of content. I want to donate or I want to support it. I can support it, but it doesn't mean I'm going to get a paywall or I'm going to get a walled content, even for some duration. And that also goes to reinforce our mission as a platform, which is continuously helping creators get more audiences, bigger reach, and more revenue. And the beauty in our business model is that it is aligned with more reach, because the more we help creators maximize their reach through radios, taxis, airlines, different integrations that we've done, the more we help them monetize, the more everyone makes money. And so I believe that is a continuously reinforcing the open podcast ecosystem and continuously really going after what creators want, which is more reach and more money. And so that is what Podio really stands for. And we did start out of the MENA region, but we've already started our global expansion.
Nice. Now, one of the other things that to mind is the Indian market. When I interviewed Gautam Rajanand, with local dialects and with local platforms were dominating the market space. So you had Ghana and a few other platforms. But then along came Spotify, then along came YouTube, then along came Amazon, and they seem to be dominating as the platforms of distribution, endpoint consumption. So within the MENA region, do you have a footprint of Spotify, Apple, and YouTube yet? Or is it local content points that are dominating now? And if they are, do you see them remaining as a dominant player?
So the region is pretty much diversified in terms of consumption. So Apple Podcast is still predominantly the consumption platform on the audio side. On the video side, it is YouTube. And when it comes to more localized play, I mean, the Podio app has significant footprint on the demand side as well, but it also acts as a companion app for creators. And so creators can also record on the go. What they do is they just open up their phone, they send the link to their friend or their guest. We could have both done that interview on the Podio app, for instance. And from the Podio app, you could either click and distribute everywhere, or you could become a listener. And so from that point, it acts on both supply and demand, which creators and listeners really see value in, because they're building on their own communities. But again, to us, it is another channel that is really growing organically, because it is a very localized podcast app to listen to. But we do not want to consolidate audiences on that app, just because our core business model scales as we help creators get more reach.
Now, given that localization of language is one of the critical pillars of what you're doing, do you think you will support something like the alternative enclosure and language translation? So one of the things I think the podcast world needs to do, I think Mr. Beast recently said it on another podcast, 15% of the world speaks English. The rest of the world doesn't. And he's very keen on getting language translation and audio dubbing into his videos, because he gets the extended reach that he wants. So if you want to extend the reach of the Arabic stories, are you going to extend that to translating them into English so that dumb people like me can listen to them because I don't speak Arabic?
Definitely. That is all integrated into the Podio creator product, which is our web app. And so we have add-ons as well, where you can click or add to cart, either dub the podcast or your episode to a different language. And now we're getting into the localized dialects. And so if you're a creator from Saudi Arabia and your audience is predominantly in Saudi Arabia, but you also want to unlock the Egyptian market and the Lebanese market and the Jordanian market, then you would be able to dub your entire podcast within the different localized sub-Arabic dialects. Obviously, that gives us a big advantage because reality is 90% plus of the supply of podcasts in Arabic are hosted and distributed through Podio, which means that the amount of localization and inputs that we're generating really help creators get these localized versions of their main Arabic podcast to tap into the sub-dialects. And that also means that, let's say, creators or podcasters in markets that have lower CPMs in the region can localize or dub their piece of content and get it into a higher CPM market like Saudi Arabia or the UAE or Qatar. And that also helps them unlock higher CPMs from a programmatic perspective or even from a direct sponsorship post-read perspective with the same piece of content. So definitely that is all streamlined as well through our web app in the form of add-ons. So usage-based add-ons.
Okay. And who's the number one podcaster in the region? Please don't tell me it's Joe Rogan. Please tell me it's
no.
Good. Thank God.
It is not.
Right.
It is.
So is it local language creators?
It is a Saudi creator. His name it's called Sawalif Tariq. He's a big YouTuber as well. So this is where you see the merge between audience growth on YouTube, and that consequently means he's the number one podcast across every single top chart, mainly in the GCC area. So it is not Joe Rogan.
Good. And in terms of the content categories, then what are the dominant content categories? I mean, is it crime, thriller, comedy, religion, sport, technology? What's dominating the listening behavior out there?
So True Crime is actually Sawalif Tariq. So he's the number one podcast in the GCC. But it's not only true crime. It's also a mix of cultural or personal journals. So this is where the two categories really come together. The next one in line is, I believe, a business podcast. So that is more related to interviews and technology. And then comedy, naturally. So these always shuffle between the top 10. It is a very diversified market as well. So there's not one or two podcasts that, continuously challenge each other. It's really more of, okay, here's a creator that we know. What we're also noticing is that creators tend to want to expand their scope of categories. So there comes at the time where we had one creator where they were doing only sports interviews with specifically basketball interviews with basketball players. And then they got to a point where they started expanding to different sports. So they started looking at soccer, they started looking at different athletes in general. And that is common in the region. I'm not sure if you've seen that, Sam, in your markets.
Yeah, I think brand extension is coming out. I mean, people are looking at trying to widen their reach. So, yeah, I can imagine. I haven't looked at it specifically, but yeah, I think that would be a natural extension.
Yeah.
So, given that you've got the platform, you've got the regional language support, and you've got the monetization, which is the critical part, you successfully raised $5.4 million last year. Congratulations, by the way. I know how hard that is. So what are you going to do with all the money?
So, yeah, definitely. It was a challenging, obviously, time to raise. So it was last year as well. We started pre-AI hype. So that was even more challenging. And also, if you look at the regional market, we're also not in very high liquidity market when it comes to fundraising. But for us, we were able to raise that money because we proved that our ecosystem makes sense at scale. And we proved the model in relatively one of the most complex languages when it comes to dialects and when it comes to markets. And so proving that entire ecosystem model with a blueprint or playbook to replicate across different global languages. So you've mentioned 15% English, then we're looking at the 85% when it comes to global languages. And we are definitely globalizing that product across the top 10 languages in the world. And that is just to reinforce our mission, which is looking at the stories and the voices from these underrepresented markets or underrepresented or repressed stories and voices across the world and help them reach larger and global audiences. And so there's really a lot of cross distribution that's happening. The more we can improve the localization, the more we help these creators reach larger audiences. The fund, it was led by Orasea Capital, based out of the UAE. We have participation from Ibtikar Fund, which is a Palestinian fund. We have participation as well from Cedar Mundi Ventures, from Razor Capital, which are based out of the UK and repeat investors. And we also have a big roster of media execs based out of the US, based out of Europe, that really believe that we're looking at a massive market, and the potential for the TAM that's going to continuously grow with time is just, unsurmountable in terms of potential for the content world. And specifically, that comes at a time where the global media aspect and sort of landscape is also shifting more towards independent creators and creators becoming content companies as opposed to sources or mainstream sources that are disseminating information the way they used to disseminate information. And so that is also where the biggest opportunity is, in my opinion, is transforming or enabling podcasters to maximize their offerings in terms of reach, but also in terms of monetization. And this is where lots of cross-collaboration in the industry need to happen. I'm really, really confident and optimistic about the podcast industry in general and where we're heading. And I believe that as Podio, we're really building that infrastructure or ecosystem in these lesser looked at markets, because obviously they're not profitable markets at the beginning. You're not looking at high CPM markets. You're looking at markets that don't have supply, that don't have demand. And reality is we have that blueprint and playbook to go into a market, scale supply, scale demand, make that market profitable, rinse and repeat, really doubling down on the mission that we initially had.
Now, let's touch on the two topics I really don't want to touch on, but I know we're going to get asked. So the first one is video, and where is your heart and mind with relation to video and distributing to YouTube?
Yeah. So that's the topic of the industry over the last couple of months. Reality is, at the core, podcasts were always an audio first medium. I think where that is heading is video is predominantly winning in terms of reach. Reality is YouTube has probably or on the verge of cracking that discoverability medium that podcast apps couldn't figure out. What I'm fearing is that the podcast has a community, and that is when you went to listen to a podcast and you were following or part of that subscribing to a community. The way podcasts are being discovered on YouTube today are typically through algorithms, which in a way is counterintuitive to the core offering of the medium, which is community first. What we've seen, on the other hand, is that lots of audiences are discovering the piece of content on YouTube or on other channels, but they're not going to watch that 40, 50-minute episode. They're going to go and look for that podcast and subscribe to it and listen to it on one of the audio platforms. And so what we're building as well is sort of a mechanism to help that transition from discovering the piece of content on one of these channels and converting to listen to it on an on-demand podcast app. And that, in a way, is something that we've been relatively successful in doing, because when we look at our different distribution channels on radios, on airlines, on gaming apps, on taxis, we want to help creators, help get them discovered and really convert the audience that discovered that show to follow or subscribe to that podcast. And so we've seen it work. So I don't see it not working, even in the case of YouTube or even in the case of video. So that is where personally I think the industry is going to move forward. Video is going to have a big role in discoverability, but not in consumption as a whole. And I also think it's generally a good thing to uplift that entire podcast industry. I'm optimistic about the way the industry is moving forward, and I don't see it as a threat. I see it as a complement or an amplifier to the medium itself.
Now, you said it right at the beginning of the interview about radio being a major distribution network. And one of my personal focuses in 2025 is around live podcasting. I think that's a massive opportunity. I think when you think of radio and live radio, it's the distribution over the network. Now, a podcast that is live, distributed over a podcast app or through the live item tag, is equally, in some people's mind, just radio, because it's just that consumption in the immediacy. Are you planning to support something like the live item tag? Are you planning to support live capabilities for broadcasting of your content creators?
Definitely. Sam, we stand for wherever and however creators can get discovered and generate more revenue. And if the live aspect is going to help with that, and could be with the tipping, could be with the gifting, then this is definitely what we stand for and what we're going to do. So the way we look at it is we believe in on-demand audio first, but that doesn't mean we're not going to support live audio or video in general, just because it will help creators get their word out there. So this is our North Star. And the how, we're going to have to navigate according to trends, according to how consumers are behaving, how consumers are consuming, and we're just going to be committed to that North Star. And whatever route or whichever route we're going to have to amend or adapt or even optimize for, then we stand for that. Because to us, just creators are our North Star, and we're going to help them reach, and we're going to help them with monetization.
Okay, we've kept it till last. You have some exciting news. Tell me more.
So some exciting news always related to these two metrics, these two North Stars. So we have signed with SMC, which is Saudi Media Company, which is the largest ad rep in the GCC. So that is really exciting for us because that's a new chapter in terms of maximizing monetization when it comes to brands and agencies, connecting them with the relevant creators. So programmatic sponsorship and creator economy in general. So that's something that we're super excited for and really kicking off that as of this month. And it's all about forming these partnerships to continuously reinforce our core North Stars. And we also have our newest joiner to the team, Wei Fen Thang, who joins us from TikTok. Previously, she was with Spotify and previously was with Google, so sales manager for the three companies. And she's a really big believer as well in podcasting. And she joins us on this new chapter as well this month to, again, double down on our North Stars.
Congratulations. I'm really excited for you. That's two big news stories there. Now, with all of this in mind, with the new hire, with the new advertising partnerships that you've got, I assume you'll be raising more funding. The overall goal then, where do you see yourselves in a year's time, if you can extrapolate that out?
Sure. So we see ourselves at a position where we really optimized for the Middle East and North Africa market and really maximized the potential when it comes to educating brands and agencies on the importance of podcasting, the high ROIs and ROAS that podcast advertising has. And the beauty is that there's big appetite from big agencies to really get into the medium, because the medium has really proved over and over again that it is a medium that has high retention, high engagement, and high ROAS. And it's on us as a platform and as an ecosystem or, larger community of creators to make sure that that message is heard and budgets are maximized towards podcasting. So that is the roadmap, obviously, for the next year. And obviously doubling down on all the different languages that we mentioned and help just continuously optimize for our mission and just amplify more voices from different languages and stay true to our vision, stay true to our ability to maximize and amplify the reach of creators and add in more distribution channels as well. So partnering with more partners, distribution partners and channels to help creators maximize their discoverability and obviously help them convert these newly acquired audiences into their own community of audiences and listeners.
Nice. Look, congratulations, Stefano. It's been a joy to watch your growth and your journey. I look forward to it. Are you going to be coming to the London podcast show?
I am hoping to. It's just that schedule might interfere with something or a previous commitment that I have in the region, but I'll hope to catch you there.
The last thing, if someone wants to go and learn more about Podio, wants to use it, where would they go?
Podio.co. That's all. If they're a creator or listener or an advertiser, they'll find everything on our platform, on our web app. Or if you want to sort of also explore creating tools on the go or listen to obviously the global library of podcasts and more localized or regional shows, then there's also the Podio app that they can download and listen on.
I just had one last question that went through my head. I'm sorry. What about the diaspora? Because clearly there is a massive Arabic diaspora that exists. Are you finding that diaspora is also coming to Podio as a customer?
So the fourth market in terms of demand for us is actually the US, which is all Arab expats that strive to listen to localized stories. And so what we're sort of dubbed as well in that diaspora community is that Podio is a cultural bridge. It's a cultural bridge between the region and between the expats that are sort of silenced or left out from what's happening on ground, from the stories that are happening on ground. And so that is something as well that we really sort of are proud of. And that's something that is going to be the core aspect of what is going to bring these global audiences together. Today, we're the cultural bridge for Arab expats. Tomorrow, we're the cultural bridge for the top 10 languages that we're adding to the platform.
Nice. Stefano, great to meet you. Great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Speak to you soon, my friend.
The Pod News Weekly Review with Buzzsprout. Start podcasting, keep podcasting.
Stefano from Podio in Dubai. I last saw him at the end of last year. Good to hear that he's made some good announcements there. Talking about announcements, you've got some more, haven't you, here?
Yeah. Flight Story, Stephen Bartlett's company, has made they say a critical hire. Somebody called Leon Farrell, who's joining them. He was at Warner Music Group, and he drove revenue for Dua Lipa, Muse, Ed Sheeran, and many more. It's interesting that it's a music hire. That's one of the things that I was interested in. But also, Stephen has gone into a long sort of explanation about where he sees the market. Excuse me. Where he sees the market. He's talked about the creator economy much more. And he's talking about how in phase one, influencers were an ad space. You know, you could put paid billboards, basically. You can put ads against them. In phase two, influencers became employees and they started working with the brands. In phase three, influencers became equity partners. They started taking shares in the companies that they were promoting. And now influencers are the entrepreneurs. The slice of the company wasn't big enough. So people like Mr. Beast have taken on a whole series of companies themselves, KSI, Logan Paul, and they're making millions and billions for themselves. So Stephen's saying that basically the use of podcasting and influencers is now changing as a role, and they've taken this guy, Leon Farrell, on to lead the creative ventures at Flight Studio.
Yes, and there are a lot of creator conversations that Stephen Bartlett is currently involved in. He will be at the podcast show London, or rather the team from Flight Story will be at the podcast show in London, and they have a session called The Creator Economy is Dead. Welcome to the era of creator entrepreneurs. The one thing that I would say on that is that creators aren't necessarily entrepreneurs. Some of them can be that. Stephen Bartlett is a good example of somebody that can also be an entrepreneur as well. But quite a lot of creators just want to create stuff and they don't want to run their own businesses. So it's good for some people, maybe not so good for others. But they will be doing a big session on this at the podcast show London, which has a ton of fascinating things going on there as well.
Awards and events, James. There isn't particularly one coming up in terms of awards, but the New York Times had an interesting article and they posed the question, are awards really worth the entry money? they were talking about how so many of the big awards now, you have to pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to enter. And they're asking, is the return on investment really worth entering an award?
Yes, probably. I would guess from somebody that was a little bit grumpy that they didn't win an award. It's usually the way of these things. And the New York Times article is specifically about the podcast awards, the iHeart Podcast Awards, the Ambi Awards, and the Signal Awards. And some podcasters are fearing a money grab. Of course, there are plenty more shows that aren't, or plenty more awards that aren't these three as well. So, yes, I mean, there's particularly, a quote from Jason Hoch, who is a podcast producer and entrepreneur. It's the usual conversation of, have to pay a lot to enter awards. Yeah, you do, because awards actually, if you want a decent award ceremony, it costs money. And if you want decent awards, they cost money. And if you want judges, if you want to make sure that you get decent judges rather than some of the ways that some of these shows are actually chosen, then that costs money as well. This guy seems to be really surprised that, firstly, you have to pay to enter awards, and secondly, you have to pay for the award itself as well, which is what normally happens in these things. So, it's a bit sort of sad that you get these knocking emails after a while, but there you go. I suppose people are people are always going to write nasty things, aren't they, about things?
Pays your money, you get your awards.
Yes, but on the other side, if you don't enter awards, you're never going to win them. So you've obviously got that side of it as well.
Now, talking of awards, the Webby Awards have announced the winners. The event is going to be on the 12th of May at Cipriani in Wall Street. But again, James, the big winner was Dan Taberski's Hysterical. He seems to have won everything this year. He's won so many other awards. He's won Ambies. He's won Apple Awards. I should really listen to it, I guess.
Yes, I know. I keep on thinking that as well. Yeah, he's not necessarily the big winner. He is one of the winners. Kara Swisher also winning for an appearance she made on the Possible podcast. Lots of other winners in there as well. I had the exclusive of the podcast winners in Tuesday's Pod News this week. And particular congratulations to Club Shay Shay from iHeart Podcasts. They won both the Webby Awards and the People's Voice Award for Best Creator or Influencer Series. Winning both the Webby Award and the People's Voice Award is obviously a very important thing that only the very best Webby Award winners get.
Come on. Has anyone else done this? Just asking.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yes, I forget that was one that I won. But yes, but the full list in the usual Pod News fashion. Linking to the trailers and the artwork and everything else, you'll find in the podnews.net website.
Now, the London Podcast Show is coming up very soon, 21st, 22nd of May. James, who's going to be headlining as partners there?
Yes, so they have signed, this is a deal that has apparently taken months to do, but both Global and iHeart are the headline partners of the podcast show in London. Now, that is interesting because iHeart is not a company that has any business in the UK, nor any business in Europe. iHeart is a purely US or North American brand. It also has brands in Latin America and here in Australia and New Zealand. but it's nowhere in anywhere in Europe. So it's interesting seeing that they are one of the two big sponsors. The other big sponsor, or the other big headline partner, is Global, which is a radio company that also owns Captivate, based in the UK. So what are iHeart doing there? Who knows? There's an interesting thing. Anyway, lots of media partners, lots of exhibitors, lots of paid partners and everything else, all involved. There's a big list of them in the Pod News website this week. I'm looking forward to being there, as are you, Sam, because I know that you're coming, because this very show is live on the second day towards the end. So we're looking forward to doing, I'm sure everybody will be delighted to know, just a 30-minute version of this show. So that should be fun. I've already been chatting to a couple of people who will be coming. Danny Brown from Captivate, he will be coming. They've allowed him out of Canada just for this.
Excellent.
So he gets to.
Was his Scottish accent fading? Did he have to come back and get some more Scottish in him?
Well, nobody will understand him in London, of course, will they? But there we are.
Transatlantic voices.
Yes.
The good news is next week we will have Jason Carter, the organizer, the owner, the CEO, whatever title Jason would like to have, on the show to tell us more about what's going on at the London Podcast Show.
That will be an excellent thing. And talking about Danny Brown, I am on the podcast that he puts together in and around podcasting this week. And so if you've not had enough of me, although... goodness, then you can get another hour of me on that show as well.
The tech stuff on the Pod News Weekly Review.
Yes, it's the stuff you'll find every Monday in the Pod News newsletter. Here's where Sam talks technology. What have you got here, Sam?
Well, one of the things that we've tried to do is not just have UK voices or American voices or English-speaking voices. We've tried to go further. The interview with Podio being one example to understand about the Middle East market. And one of our friends over in India is Gautam Rajanand, and he runs Hubhopper. And from time to time, we want to catch up with him to find out what's happening in the South Asian market, but also what's he doing specifically with Hubhopper. And they recently announced that they've integrated with Headliners Eddie to provide AI-powered text editing and transcriptions, but they've also announced that they've now integrated with YouTube to provide video podcasting. So one of the first hosts to actually support direct video podcasting. And they've also launched a new guest and host matching service. I think that's the way to talk about it. It's called Mic Match, and so, yes, I thought I'd reach out to Gautam and find out what's going on with Hubhopper and what's going on in India. And I start off by saying one of the things that we had talked about recently was video and podcast hosts supporting it. Tell me more about what you've done with video integration.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you and I are on a couple of groups and we are seeing polarized stances with hosts and their approach to video podcasts and how podcasting is changing. I think for us as a philosophy, I think podcasts are whatever the consumer wants them to be. At least till a couple of years ago, podcasts denoted or implied a technology, right? And now it's changed more from a technology to a conversational style. And that conversational style can take place across any format. So as an organization, because we know that the pain point and the want of the creator today is to be omni-channel, and the assumption of the consumer is that podcasts can be anything. Our goal is to facilitate distribution not just into audio, but also into video and social from one platform alone. So, I mean, right now you're looking at Hubhopper distributing directly into YouTube, along with all audio platforms, some of which are exclusive just to us because they're in the South Asian market and emerging markets. But going forward, you're going to see us integrating with very many different video platforms as well. Some very large names, of course, we don't need to guess between the two of us. And then in the future, extending that forward to also automatically distribute into social platforms from Hubhopper. So objective is upload once, distribute everywhere. So yeah, that's pretty much our thought process right now, and we think that this echoes very strongly and true with creators.
So what's been the uptake with video from your user base? So what have they said?
Okay, so it's been really good actually. And let's talk about the negative side. So first is we saw a slowdown on the number of audio creators. So it's not just a one-sided push, it's also a pull down from the other side. I don't know how many hosts or how many folks would admit to this, but we've actually seen a deceleration in the number of audio podcasts being created. And ever since we enabled video distribution via YouTube just now, we've come back to ceteris paribus. So the uptake has been, touchwood, really good, because we also do a thing where if you upload an MP file to upload to YouTube, and in the future other video platforms, we will automatically also convert it into audio and distribute it into audio platforms. So we want to make it such where even if you're uploading an MP3 file, you will have the ability to convert it into a video file, which is an MP4 file, and distribute it into YouTube, and vice versa. So either way, we want to get you into as many platforms as possible.
So are you going to use the alternative enclosure to then have one feed with both audio and video in it, or are you going to have two separate feeds?
So you're aware, and we already do support the alternate enclosure tag. But once again, we want to leave this to the creator's discretion. So we give them the opportunity and option of leveraging the alternate enclosure tag, but also if they so wish to have different feeds for these shows and operating as being completely different because they're different media formats, that's fine from our side as well.
Are you considering creating a alternative format, which is HLS? So instead of having MP3 and MP4, having a single HLS format, which could be audio and video. Have you thought about that at all?
Such an interesting thing that you bring this up. In 2019, we actually had, or 2020, I forget, we already played around with HLS. And it's quite a funny thing because we have a lot of exclusive platforms that we distribute to. We created the standard for the way they were actually taking in podcasts. So we helped build their entire ecosystem of having podcasts on their platform up and assisted their tech team. So we thought that this was a really interesting opportunity for us to distribute via HLS, because we'd also be able to tell creators, drop off rates, till what point people were consuming, which is unfortunately a major, pain point for creators where they don't really know their finishing rates or completion. So we did that and integrated successfully, and this had, positive impact on our server costs as well and hosting costs. Did this for a couple of years with a few companies, giant companies which have 500 million monthly active users. Unfortunately, then came the time where people wanted to start standardizing towards what Spotify were doing and what certain other the largest platforms are doing. So these companies then came back to us and said, okay, we've been doing HLS for a really long time. Could we please actually go back to MP3? Or rather go to MP3 for the first time. So for an organization that actually tried to be future forward with HLS 4 years ago, we unfortunately, due to market forces, were forced into the old school structure of doing things. We're very happy to try it again. I think it has positive benefits for everybody involved. We just would need the DSP, the consumption side platforms, to be open to doing it. All of our tech stack is still ready to support it. It's been built in that way. So,
well, with my CEO of True Fans, I'll tell you we already support HLS, so you can always try it with us if you want. But the other thing I'm looking at, Gotham, and maybe something you want to look at, there's a new update to HLS called Low Latency HLS. So one of the things you were talking about with HLS was 6-second chunks of data, and therefore you could measure performance based on where it dropped off. You can actually do low latency HLS, and it's a 1-second chunk, and it's actually a standard that they've updated on HLS. So maybe it's worth looking at that as well.
Thank you for that. I've actually taken a note of that. I didn't know about this. Thank you so much for putting it on my radar. Thank you.
No worries. Now, one of the other issues with video is cost of distribution. What are you finding from your own experience with the cost?
Look, there's no way to argue against it. It is a cost. My hope is that it is a short-term cost, which over time will get commoditized. The same way as today we look at audio hosting costs, which are actually quite affordable today. They used to be very different even 5, 6, 7 years ago. I believe the same thing will potentially happen on the video side of things. And different hosting providers, when I say hosting providers, I mean infra providers, will battle to a point where these costs will actually be bearable both for us as well as for the customer. Because the last thing we want to do is, one is either bleed too much money. We are open to take the first hit on it initially and not put too much of the burden on the customer. But going forward, we would also want it to be such where it's economically viable for us as well as for the end creator as well as for the infra company. So, I mean, it should be a win-win. I know this is a very diplomatic thing to say, but we've already seen it happen before on the audio side of things. So there's no reason why it shouldn't happen again. The second thing that I would actually believe is that with video podcasts, if we pass on a little bit of the cost to the customer, the potential for monetization is generally a little bit higher on the video side. And this is no surprise to anybody. So if we're charging a slightly higher amount for video hosting and video distribution, the hope and the assumption is on our side that the monetization for the creator should also be commensurate and they should be able to pull that much capital out of it. So at the end of this entire scenario, if we're looking at each individual creator having their own P&L and a balance sheet, they shouldn't be hit too badly. Right now, we're not pushing these costs heavily onto them. We're taking a large burden of it because otherwise it'll shock the system. But over time, we'd want it to be such that their monetization is strong enough that they're able to withstand a little bit of slightly higher hosting charges on the video side. At the same time, hoping that macroeconomic forces will prevail and you'll see generally video hosting becoming cheaper at an infra level.
I agree. I think scalability, the network usage should come down with more access to it. Now, congratulations on doing that. That sounds very exciting. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk to you is a new feature that you've launched, or a new site you've launched maybe, called Mic Match. Now, tell me more about Mic Match.
Okay, so thank you so much, Sam. I think the last year has been really interesting in podcasting for everybody because we've even seen major changes at a data level. Like, for example, we've seen the peak days for creator upload changing. Now we're looking at peak days for creator upload sitting between Tuesday and Wednesday. Peak days for consumption is happening on Friday and Saturday. You're looking at the hours of consumption changing. You're looking at devotion and religion, which I told you the last time I was on this call, being the top genre for consumption by a big margin. You're looking at that margin shrinking, and education is now coming and catching up very, very quickly. And I think a large portion of this is actually because people have begun to think about podcasts in a slightly different way ever since YouTube came into the market, and they think about podcasts as a synonymous word with interviews. Basically, podcasts equaling interviews. That creates a whole host of new problem statements in the market. And these problem statements may have been there always, but they've just been, lifted up to a large degree. So the problem statement that I'll state to you, which you probably have also felt, is the chasm or the pain point between podcasts hosts not being able to find appropriate guests and podcast guests who are aspiring guests that may be leaders in their own space, who all want to be on podcasts because it's a showcase of their domain authority, not being able to find how to actually be on shows. So we did a little bit of research in trying to understand this place and this chasm, and found out that this problem was much more painful than we had initially thought it was, because even people that were domain leaders and market leaders in their own fields, the only way that they were able to reach out to podcasts in their vicinity was through word of mouth, because the only other options that they had at their disposal in a market like India, other emerging markets, etc., were they would have to put it up on Instagram, which is something that they wouldn't do because they've been in the industry that they've been in for 15 years, which is quite embarrassing for them to do. So they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't put it up on LinkedIn either. At best, they would, slide into a creator's DMs or write into them in email on LinkedIn, or they would cold mail them. That was their best case scenario. And then they'd get lost in a barrage of mails or DMs that the host was already getting, despite this person being a potentially appropriate guest. And the host on the other side was having the opposite problem statement, wherein they were getting a lot of people that wanted to be on their shows, but very small percentage of them actually were appropriate for their shows. So only 15-20% of them would be appropriate for their shows. So think about MicMatch as nothing but a Tinder for podcast hosts and podcast guests. And what it does is it does exactly what a matchmaker would do. It will ask both sides to fill in details of what they're specifically looking for, takes you into a very clean user experience. You get weekly suggestions on potential guests or potential hosts, which are marked with a particular percentage of how strong your match is. And then you can start a conversation with these people. And if the conversations begins to move forward, the feature already has a CRM in it. So you together, between you and your potential next guest, can then move each other across the CRM, and both of you keep getting notified as the CRM position is changing. So we've got a lot of positive feedback and critique in the initial days of the things that we're doing wrong, as well as the things that we're doing right. So in order to get a lot more feedback, right now we've kept it completely free, both for hosts and for guests. So come one, come all, go to micmatch.io and give it a whirl. And please be brutally honest. We know that at an MVP level, there's a lot more that we can do. We just believe that this is a broken marketplace problem that can be solved. And Sam, I'm just sort of giving you a little bit of peek into what could be in store in the future is that this isn't the only broken marketplace in the podcasting space. There is still a broken marketplace with people that want services, which are ranging from editing to animation to etc. and podcast hosts. There's another broken marketplace between brands across the board and podcasters. So I'm maybe jumping the gun, but if you've created something that actually joins people effectively, that somewhat sticks together a broken marketplace, you have the opportunity of solving defragmentation to quite a little bit of a degree and helping folks along the way. But still long ways for us to go. Early stages, it's a beta product, which is why it's free. Please kindly use it, go for it, and tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like.
I'll be brutally honest, I'm not a great fan of matching services, but that's because I don't use them myself. But I can see the need. I can see how you've implemented it and, ranking guests. And I saw a service recently from Jim James, who actually did a post ranking of the guest based on their tone, their speed of conversation, their expertise. That was quite interesting as well. So I think, I can imagine you with MicMatch being able to then upload, host the interview, an ability to say, oh yeah, this guest was great, and here's the AI report on them, and here's what the transcript said about them, etc. I think there's so much opportunity there I can see. And I love the idea like Fiverr being able to find video editors or AI people, or maybe just somebody who's a publisher or a script writer or whatever. I think that's a lovely broken market. I agree with you. And then branding for the long tail, I think, is, again, another broken market. So, yeah, nice ideas, like them. So, Gotham, congratulations on all the work you've been doing with YouTube and video, all the work with MicMatch. Tell people where they can go again to find out more about Hubhopper and MicMatch.
Hubhopper.com. And if you go to hubhopper.com/podnews, we'll create a specific link for that. We'll give you a few months free as well, so that you can play around with it and tell us what you like and what you don't like. And then micmatch.io is anyways free. So come one, come all. Please tell us your thoughts and where we can improve. There's a bunch that we can do, I'm sure. But exciting days ahead and looking forward to it. Thanks, Sam, for always telling us and telling me about these incredible new things. I'm going to look at low latency HLS right now, in fact, after this call. And catch you later today, possibly.
Thanks, Gotham. Speak to you soon. Bye, mate.
Boostergram. Super comments. Zaps. Fan mail. Super chats. And email. Our favorite time of the week. It's the Pod News Weekly Review inbox.
Yes, so many different ways to get in touch with us. Fan mail by using the link in our show notes. Super comments on True Fans, boosts everywhere else, or email, of course. We share any money that we make as well between us. It's weekly@podnews.net, by the way, our email address and all of that. And a ton of boosts all of a sudden. Seeing loads of boosts, although I have to say most of them from True Fans, although there's a fair amount from the Fountain app as well. What have we got here, Sam? We've got one from Matt Cundall.
Yeah, Matt says, excellent interview with Amaya from Spotify. Appreciate the demystifying of Spotify video. Yes, it was a good interview. Well done, sir.
Why, thank you very much. And good of Maya to come on. John McDermott, 4,444 sats. That's nice. Thank you, John. I wish to complain, he says. Does he want the 10-minute complaint or the full half hour? I love James's comment about copying bosses on emails so much, I almost emailed him about it. That would have been not getting it. So now you guys get sats. Brilliant. 4444 double ducks, or $3.79, according to True Fans Tech. Yes. Thank you, John. He, of course, launched a couple of weeks ago White Smoke, a podcast all about how the next new pope is chosen. It's almost as if he knew that something was going to happen there. But still.
Yes.
Yes.
Conclave came out 6 months too early. That's all.
What else have we got here?
222 to a row of ducks from Bruce, the ugly quacking duck. I got lost, looked up Google Maps, ended up getting my wires crossed, still found my way back to news. Thanks again for Pod News. You guys are a great team. Thank you. 73 on the call out.
Yes, thank you, Bruce. From the late bloomer actor, 375 sats. I love the SPC concept from John Spurlock. Yes, that was in last week's show as well, wasn't it? He says it can't come quick enough. I feel there's only one real metric we need, and that's a retention metric, perhaps coupled with listener data. I don't care that much about download data. No good if I have 1,000 downloads, but they all stop listening under 10% in. But if I've got 50 downloads and they all average 90% or more of my show, then that's data worth knowing. Now, John does actually have the concept of that retention data in the SPC as an example. Where do you sort of stand on the SPC, Sam? Are you thinking it's an excellent plan, or is it a bit naive from John's point of view?
No, I don't think it's naive. I think, we do need to share this data back with hosts. It's what, late bloomer actor is looking for, right? We have that data. He has that data actually in his creators dashboard, because I know he uses True Fans. But what John's asking us to do for the metadata high level, number of listeners, number of followers, total time listened, that stuff we can share with hosts. But as I said on the interview, it's a quid pro quo. If we're going to give you as a host this data, what do we get back in? It's more of a business deal. Will you promote us as a app on your platform? Will you write about it in the newsletter? Will you encourage people to come to us? Because why would we do it otherwise? So I don't think it's naive. I think we need to work together, but there needs to be you scratch your back and I'll scratch mine, or the other way around even. No, I think it works. I think the problem is the array of data that John wants, which is where people listen up to and where they drop off. That's slightly information that I don't know yet. I don't know what I'm going to do with that, because again, one of the things we want as apps to be able to do is to, create pro accounts. And that has to be some value in creating a pro account. And that's potentially first-party data given back to the creator. Now, some of that data, I know you said is their data, right? Fair enough. But without us writing the tools, they wouldn't have the data. So accessing the data and then allowing the creator to choose with a permission to share back to their host is probably the way we will do it, so that we're not the ones making that decision, but it's the creator themselves saying, yeah, I've got all this data, I've paid for it, it's in my creator's dashboard, and yes, I'm going to share this data via SPC back to my host. I think that may be the way it goes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens and whether or not any podcast apps, jump in and start sharing that kind of information. I think it's a very clever technical solution, but I think, yes, there's definitely some business conversations to be going on there as well, I guess. What else have we got? We've got Lyceum with 2222 sats, a row of ducks. James, I know somebody who could do email training. I'm not really looking for email training. I'm just saying that that's a really good way to get rich. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, he says, fellow podcaster David Steenholm. His title is Structor, the structure guy. Check out his podcast. Done. All the best. Martin Lindeskog. I'm trying to pronounce that in the same way that Adam Curry does. Yes, Lyceum, thank you so much for that. Yes, I think that is an easy way to get rich, is to teach people how to use email. Silas on Linux has sent us a couple of a bag of Richards. Don't call it Sam Talks True Fans or True Fans Weekly Review. Call it True Sams. Now this is your new podcast, isn't it? Have you got a name for it?
Yes, we're going to just call it Creators.
Oh, Creators.
Yes, it's very simple. And it's basically Claire and I, we recorded the first episode yesterday, or it will land on Monday. So we're just finishing off the editing, and then yes, it will be, James, in your new podcast apps for you.
Very nice. Is it going to have a trailer?
It is going to have a trailer as well, so excellent. Yes, you'll be able to use that. We just thought very simply, it's about helping creators monetize their fandoms, and so it's all about creators. So we're going to highlight independent podcast creators and independent podcast musicians, invite some of those maybe on the show, talk about what's available for them to make money as creators and how they can do it. So yeah, that's sort of theme of the Creators Show.
Excellent. What Silas also says is, speaking of Tim Cook being the worst thing to happen to Apple, not going to agree or disagree with that, but Tim Cook has been serving as CEO for longer than Steve Jobs ever did. Think about that. Something that I hadn't considered. So Silas, thank you for that. And he also sends a row of ducks quoting me, or actually quoting Maya, who I fervently agree with. Sticking video in an RSS feed is a bad user experience. And Silas says that's a really bullshit statement. The RSS feed does not dictate user experience. But in this case it does. In this case it does, because putting a massive, great big RSS a massive, great big video file in an RSS feed is not great. Is not a good plan.
Is it? I mean, we don't put the MP3 in the RSS. We put a pointer.
No. But even putting a pointer in there, it's not a great user experience for video, because you need multiple different versions of video. You need multiple different resolutions. You need all kinds of things there. Just sticking one video file in there is not good for anybody. And at the end of the day, if you can't stream it, then it really doesn't work from a point of view of a playback experience. There's a reason why YouTube works the way it does and doesn't just download the 1080p video to your device. It works that way so that it can look the best on whatever device you actually have. So,
which is why low latency HLS, I think, is the way forward.
Correct. Which is why streaming is certainly one of the ways forward for video. I think that makes a bunch of sense. So, Silas, thank you for your sats. Don't agree, but very kind of you to get in touch and talking about people who I don't agree with. 1,173 sats, which is something from Seth. And Seth just says, Apple is evil. And I'm not sure I agree with that either. I don't think that Apple is... I don't think, certainly, if you were to look at Apple in comparison to Google or Microsoft or Facebook, I think Apple will come out pretty well out of that. And I don't think that's particularly fair. So, so I don't agree with that either. But thanks for the stats.
I'm more on the side of Seth than on yours. I think Apple has turned evil. I think they've... The stuff that they've done recently with the App Store and the way that they've behaved with the European Union and the way that they are treating certain people, I think.
Yes. Well, they've just been fined, haven't they?
Very well.
They've just been fined another bazillion dollars. So.
Yes, and what did Tim Cook do? Went straight to Donald Trump to go and tell those naughty Europeans off for me, please.
Yes, I paid my $1 million earlier on. This is where I get my comeback. It's government. It's how it works. Thank you so much to the. Excellent 18, our power supporters. You can join them at weekly.podnews.net for your kind amounts of money every single month. They are Star Tempest, Brian Ensminger, the late bloomer actor James Burt, John McDermott, Claire Waite-Brown, Mazileen Smith, Neil Velio, Rocky Thomas, Jim James, David Marsell, Cy Jobling, Rachel Corbett, Dave Jackson, Mike Hamilton, Matt Medeiros, Marshall Brown, and Cameron Moll. You can join them if you like. Just head over, clutching your credit card, to weekly.podnews.net. You can start for just $3 a month and get in that list. And that would be a splendid thing. So thank you for them. What's happened for you this week, Sam?
Well, I had a weird epiphany moment. So we are putting creators as a podcast with Buzzsprout. Thank you to Alban. And I was checking out Co-Host and I was going through various features. And one of the things that I wanted to do with the Creators Podcast was also to create a blog post with a screencast in it. So let's say we were talking about a new technology. I can reference it and say, oh, by the way, in this episode, you can go and read the blog post and see the screencast of how this works. And then I went to Buzzsprout and I realized that Co-Host, their AI technology, does our transcriptions, it does our show titles, but it also pre-creates a blog copy that you can put straight into a blog post. And I thought, wow, okay. So I actually went and took the interview or the episode that we did with Maya Prohovnik, and I went and looked at what Buzzsprout wrote about that whole episode, and I've cut and pasted that into TrueFans, into the blog for Pod News Weekly Review. And so you can now just create blog posts instantly from audio shows. So I think it's quite a nice thing. I would love to work out a way where we could automate that in some way, but I don't know how we're going to do that yet. But I do know Dave Jones is working on something related to that.
Oh, interesting. Have you been on any... In fact, I know this. I saw you in some newsletter this week. In some competing newsletter.
Not competing, James. Not competing.
No, not really.
No, Andrea, lovely Andrea that she is, invited me onto Eurowaves to talk about a little bit about, obviously, TrueFans, but I was also talking about the industry and a lot about AI. I mean, I'm very gung-ho on what we're doing with AI. And so I talked a little bit about that. And I'll be presenting and demoing at the London Podcast Show some of our new interface that we're working on related to AI as well.
Very nice too. Excellent. It would be worthwhile finding out a little bit more about that. What else is going on? We mentioned Stripe earlier. That's Stripe with a P.
It is, yes. One of our things that we did was we created one-click top-up of your wallet via Stripe in TrueFans. And that was something that I thought was a very quick feature. And you said it earlier, there are a lot of people giving us boosts from TrueFans, and that's because I think it's easy to do it from TrueFans. I'm not saying it's not easy in other apps. I just think we've done an easy method. But one of the criticisms we had was that I've accumulated all this money in my creator's dashboard. How do I get it out? So we've basically allowed you to either enter your a third-party external wallet, and then you can just move your sats from one wallet to another. So from a TrueFunds wallet to a Fountain wallet or a Podverse or a Podcast Guru wallet. Or if you prefer, you can convert that into fiat money, and you can do a one-click withdrawal straight back to Stripe. And you can then say, I've got 10,000 sats and I want to convert that back into pounds or dollars. We'll tell you how much that is. You click the withdraw button and it will appear in your credit card or your bank account. So yes, one-click access.
Very nice. Very nice. And you're getting very excited about another book, which you're not going to read, but you're going to get somebody else to read for you. Because that's the way you roll. I understand how this stuff works, but it's from Sir Tim Berners-Lee, famously. Sir Tim Berners-Lee in the opening of the London Olympics in 2012, famously the American commentator saying, "Well, I don't know who he was, but the inventor, of course, of the World Wide Web," and he ended up actually unveiling at that very ceremony something saying this is for everyone, and that's his new book, isn't it? You're very excited by it.
Yes, I think the title about it is, and I think given where we are in the world today, with where the internet's fragmenting and where everything is changing, I think the reminder that he invented this for everyone, for humanity, I think is a telling time. The book's coming out in September. You can pre-order it now. I although like that American commentator, I didn't go as big a faux pas as that, but I did, as you may recall, sit next to Tim Berners-Lee over lunch.
Yes.
And I did turn around to him and say, "What do you do?" Yes. So the classic. Yes. At which point he said, "I invented the web." Yes.
Yes.
Dig a hole.
Yes.
How fast?
Humble brag.
Indeed. Anyway, James, on that embarrassing note, what's happened for you this week?
Well, I wrote a thing about the new location tag, which I think is, we're just getting ready for that to, for the revisions of that to get into the new podcast namespace. So you'll find that blog post over at podcastnamespace.org under the location tag in there. I've remembered that I own that website. Might as well do something with it. But the point of the blog post was really just to point out the benefit of the OpenStreetMap functionality in there. It's very easy, I think, for quite a lot of people just to put the lateral on and think that they've done everything. And you can do that with the spec, but it's not really going to be a particularly exciting experience. And I think what I'm excited about is being able to turn around and say, show me, make a big map of lots of podcasts which are to do with wineries, for example. Don't even make a map, just show me all of the podcasts which are to do with vineyards in the south of France, for example. You can do that with OpenStreetMap IDs. You can't do that with just a random lat-lon point on the map. So this will help you get real visibility for shows. So please go and read that in case you're thinking about implementing the podcast location tag, but you're thinking about being lazy and not using OpenStreetMap, because it's a super useful thing and will really make, allow us to do loads of really interesting things. If you are, for example, producing a podcast app which is all about shows from churches, let's just say, then you could use the OpenStreetMap IDs to actually give not just maps of those churches, but lists of those churches, where they all are, all of that, a different way in to the podcast information. And I think quite a lot of this is all to do with, so far, everybody is just using podcast apps where you go in, you search for a podcast, you listen to the podcast. but actually we can organize the world of audio in lots of other ways as well. And I do think that the location tag is one of the most exciting things there from that point of view. Anyway, there we are.
You know that we use the new format for you in Pod News Daily if anyone wants to see it. But we are switching to OpenStreetMaps from Google Maps for the very reason you just explained.
Hurrah, which is an excellent thing. And also a few things on my personal blog. There's something about Fresh RSS, which I have just gone to use instead of spending lots of money on a paid-for RSS reader. I thought, I've got these boxes hidden away, I might as well use them. So I've thrown that on there of how to install that. A few other things, and perhaps one thing which it's a little bit sweary, but there's a radio station here in Australia which A, sounds rubbish and really sounds not very good at all, but also B, has been using an AI voice for the last 6 months and no one has noticed, probably because the radio station sounds so appalling. I would doubt that anybody's actually listening to it. But anyway, it's worth a read if you want to go and have a look at that. james.cridland.net/blog is where you'll find that.
I love the line. It's the Milli Vanilli of Sydney radio.
Yes, Milli Vanilli. Remember them. My goodness. And that's it for this week. All of our podcast stories taken from the Pod News Daily newsletter at podnews.net.
You can support this show by streaming sats. You can give us feedback by using the Buzzsprout fan mail link in your show notes. You can send us a super comment or a boost, or become a power supporter like the excellent 18 at weekly.podnews.net.
Our music is from TM Studios. Our voiceover is Sheila D. Our audio is recorded using Clean Feed. We edit with Hindenburg. And we're hosted and sponsored by Buzzsprout. Start podcasting. Keep podcasting.
Get updated every day. Subscribe to our newsletter at podnews.net. Tell your friends and grow the show. And support us. The Pod News Weekly Review will return next week. Keep listening.